Hey guys, Xaryu here, and today I'm going to be making a long requested video talking about what class you should play in World of Warcraft. I'm going to be going over the DPS classes, but my overarching answer for this question, guys, is play whatever you have fun playing because every single class is going to be viable. So in last expansion, we saw a bunch of classes at tournament level. Every single class at tournament level. Every single class at rank 1 level. Every single class gladiator level. So what is my answer as far as what is good or what should I play? Play anything because any class is going to be viable at the highest level if you play it in a specific way. Now, each class has different strengths and weaknesses, and each class people are going to enjoy different based on your preferences. And this video is going to help you pick the class for you. So let's jump into it. We made a little fancy-smancy Excel doc here for everything that each class kind of has and kind of offers. Now, you guys have eyes. You guys can just use your eyes on the screen, kind of read this stuff, but I'm going to be going through it and kind of explaining my choices a little bit throughout this video. So the different columns we have here are, is it a melee or range class, right? For those of you that might be new to World of Warcraft, I wanted to add this column, melee or range. The last time I did a video like this, about a year ago, I did the system a little bit different. I just did low, medium, high, sustain or burst DPS, melee range, stuff like that. So first column, melee range DPS, burst and setup class or sustain classes. So in World of Warcraft, we tend to have two different categories of classes. Classes that can just do sustain damage, and that just means steady DPS, right? That just means doing damage. Burst and setup means you're not doing much damage, you get CC, then you're bursting, and then you're not doing much damage, right? So it's this rotation of sustain versus burst and setup. So, and then there's also classes that do both of those, and I'll do a little bit of both, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Then control and support. So both of these columns are very similar. I guess the main difference I want to tell you guys here is control. I'm talking about roots. I'm talking about spammable CC. I'm talking about being able to control the enemy, stuns, disarms, fears, things like that. Support. I added things that you can have support via CC. However, support, I wanted to make more of a column for like rep paladins or these hybrid classes like Ellie shamans that have a lot of support in terms of bop, sync, off heals. These are the actual support things that a class offers. So if you're more of the player, like you don't want to play a healer, but you want that strong support role, this row you definitely want to be keeping an eye on. That's difference between control and support, even though a lot of the times you can support people through controlling the enemies, but there are two different lines here for that. Now we have mobility, speaks for itself. Do you have low, medium, or high mobility? Low being bad, medium being okay, high being the best, right? And then same here for this last line. And this last line is a line that I actually added at the end because I kind of realized a lot of people don't just play arena, right? A lot of people like to do these 1v1s. They like to duel their friends. They like to world PvP. How well can I just go out in the world and have fun in PvP, no group, just solo play? And that's what this last line is for, okay? And low being the worst, medium being you can kind of handle yourself, and high being really, really, really good for that type of gameplay. Melee range, I'm not going to be going over this row, but just basically saying, is it a melee class or is it a range class? And Unholy DK here I put as both because Unholy DKs kind of are both, all right? And then everyone else is just pretty self-explanatory there. Burst, setup, or sustain. So so here's the thing, guys. For every single sustain class, or pretty much every single sustain class, you still do burst setups. And the best example I can think of is like an Affliction Warlock that I have sustain here, right? So Affliction Warlocks are sustain, man. Like they are the definition of sustain. Or even, okay, Shadow Priest might even be a better example. One of these two, Affliction or Shadow Priest, they do sustain pressure, right? They're doing dots, they're getting out their damage. However, with both classes, maybe a Shadow Priest and a Frost Mage, they can set up burst. RLS with an Affliction Warlock, they can set up burst even though they're a sustained class. So this guide is supposed to more be like, what do you do personally, right? Affliction Warlocks essentially do sustained damage. However, keep in mind that every class has some type of way they can burst, especially in an RBG or in a 3v3 where you have that other support, DPS, so maybe RLS with the Affliction Warlocks actually helping you burst. So keep in mind, everything that has sustain can actually do burst as well, but the burst and setup classes are really, really heavy burst setup classes, right? So Arms Warrior has a sustain, can do burst setups as well. Fury, really, we see Fury in compositions like Fury Outlaw, or, you know, random double melee Fury comps where you're just going for big one-shots. And that's why I kind of say that you can burst and setup as well, even though they're generally a sustained class. Ret Pallies we usually see in burst setup comps like Ret Hunter, Ret Rogue, where you get some type of CC, pop wings, throw a bunch of damage and get a bunch of cooldowns, rinse and repeat until the game's over. Hunter, we almost always see in these burst setup comps. However, the BM Hunters have a little bit more sustain because of the pets, because of things like that. But all Hunters can kind of get CC and then throw out that burst. Rogues are very similar, right? Rogues are very similar with the burst and setup. They specifically sub really has that low consistent pressure, but then you get at that blind into the sap, cheap shot on the off target into the polymorph, then boom, you're going to throw a ton of damage out into that kidney shot, or the triple cheap shot. So sub is super bursty, tons of setup, right? So Assassination has the sustain, and I almost was just going to straight up put Assassin as a sustain class. However, Assassination does have blind, it does have Vendetta, and you can burst around that. However, a lot of the times what we see Assassination Rogues is just doing damage, right? So I would still say that their main thing is sustain, but they can burst and setup as well. It's very similar down here to Feral Druids, where Ferals are a sustain class, but they can do things like off stun, your mage gets a poly, then boom, you throw out that incarn, right? So all the ones that say sustain but can burst, it's mainly sustain, but then you can add burst in a 3v3 situation, right? So same thing with this Boomy. Windwalkers are almost all burst and setup, right? Windwalkers don't do much, and then boom, touch of death, serenity, one shots, right? So it's one or the other, right? A lot of the time. So then sustain here for Demo, but then it has those huge Demo one-shots. Affliction I have is just a sustain, just with the dot pressure. Destro is more of the burst and setup for most of the Destro specs, at least with those big bolts. Frost, all burst and setup. Frost mages, if you guys watch this channel, you know Frost has no sustain at all. It's all about the burst and setup. Now, Fire is more about the sustain. However, if you're playing like Fire Rogue or Fire Feral, you can still get the setups, right? You can still get the CC, but it's almost like CC with sustain, right? CC with sustain is kind of what that Fire Mage does. And then Arcane's very, very similar to Fire, maybe a hybrid between the Fire and the Frost. Enhance, all about those crazy burst setups with Beast Cleave, with Enhance Assassination Rogue, a lot of comps that we've seen. So Enhance, definitely about those big one-shots. Now, Ellie has the sustain, but then you can play things like Ellie Outlaw or Ellie Arcane Mage, right? And do setups and do burst setups, but it's really about that sustained pressure for that. And then Frost DKs, burst and setup, guys. Unholy DKs have that sustain. So now control, low, medium, or high control. And what I mean by control, I said at the start of this video, but not really like supporty stuff, but more just like, do you have spammable CC, right? Mages are high control on all of them. Do you have things like fear, disarm? Like, can you control the game? If everyone's doing things, can you stop them from doing things? Do you have CC, crowd control? All right, so that's what this row is for. So classes with spammable CC, balanced druid with the cyclones high, warlocks with the fears high. I have medium for Destro here because Destros usually can't use all of their crowd control for crowd control. A lot of times they use it for like doing big burst setups. So I'd say that's more in their burst and setup. So we usually see a little bit less fears coming out of Destro than Affliction or Demo. A little bit less control coming out from that Destro warlock than the other specs. But that's just usually what we see. That's why that's a medium. Triple high for the mages. High for Ellie, and this is an interesting one. So they don't have a spammable CC, but they have roots. They have groundings. They have shears. They have hex. They have a lot in terms of control. They have frost shock. So they have knockback, right? So they don't really have a spammable CC, but they have like 15 different ways to actually stop the enemy from what they want to do. So I would put that on high. Now, Enhance doesn't quite have all of that. They have some. You could argue that this actually could be medium instead of low here for control for the Enhanced Shaman as well. Low control for the Frost DK. They don't have much. Unholy, a little bit higher there at medium because they do have an extra grip, an extra kick, things like that. So they actually can control pretty well there as the Unholy DK. Shadow Priest, not so much control. The Rogues, Sub, I think, has the highest control. Assassination, medium, right? They can vanish double cheap. They have the blind. They have the kidney on the cooldown, but they don't have those on-demand stances where they can just spam out that high CC. And Outlaw, you could argue that it has high control. It has gouge, it has blind, and it has those random stunts as well, the Outlaw stuns, but it's a little bit more RNG. So it's not like if someone's dying, you can always peel like Sub. It's like, did I roll the bones correctly? Okay, I did. Let me get some huge peels. So that's why I put it as a medium instead of a high. But Outlaw does have the potential to have very high peels if it does get those lucky procs or the correct roll of the bones. Hunter here, we have medium, low. Ret Paladins, low control, right? They just have that Hammer of Justice. They not really too much of a control class. And the Warriors I put at medium, right? Things like War Banner, I guess War Banner is more of a support, but so things like Stormbolt, things like Fear, you could maybe argue that Warriors also have low. I guess they have Disarm too, so Fear, Disarm, Stun. So it just seems like in a situation where everything is not under control, Warriors can actually get things under control pretty quickly. So that's why I have them a medium. There might be, if there was another option for like medium low, that was probably where Warrior would be, medium low, just on the low side of that. Support now, Warriors have that rallying cry. They have the War Banner. They actually can support pretty well in times of needs. That's pretty cool. Ret Paladins have the highest support probably in the game, right? They have Bop, Off Heals, Sank, like we talked about, and that's really what this line was for, is those classes that just have a ton of support, they kind of need their own line too, and a lot of classes that aren't hybrid classes have low support, right? Medium for that BM Hunter, low for the other two Hunters, low for all the Rogues, but they have CC, right? So if someone's getting low, you can peel. That's a way of supporting, but we have the control line. So low, but has support via CC. Same thing with Mages, same thing with Warlocks. Now here with the Monks and Druids, they have some off heals. They have the Dispels for some things, curses or poisons. They have some type of actual hard support, so we have those at medium. And then the classes like Ellie Shaman, we have a high. The Shadow Priest, we have a high from the Life Grip, the Shields, the Swap, the Off Heals, things like that. Very, very high support class there for the Shadow Priest. So really just the Ellie, the Shadow Priest, and the Ret seems like the highest support classes we have in the game. And then a lot of these are kind of in between there. And guys, this is for BfA. This guide is for BfA, but if you really take it down and look at this, this is very general advice. So you could use this for any expansion. If you're playing on a private server back in the day, or if you're watching this in a future expansion, this kind of covers all your bases as far as just general what classes we should play, because although classes have changed quite a bit over time, this is generally what we see throughout time. And then mobility, right? We have classes like Demon Hunter with high mobility, Feral Druids, Balance Druids with high mobility, Monks high mobility, Arcane Mages high, and we have classes like Warlocks with very low mobility, or DKs with very low mobility, Priests with very low mobility, that are, that can't quite just run away, right? And then we have classes in between as well, like Ellie and Enhance, Frost Mage, Fire Mage. Frost and Fire could maybe be in the high mobility section as well. So maybe a medium high here. Not quite as good mobility as Arcane. Arcane has an extra 2 blinks, essentially, with that displacement ability. But Frost and Fire kind of fall somewhere maybe medium high. And then Rogue Sub has that extra step, so they have a ton of mobility. Assassin Outlaw, maybe just medium there with that grapple and the single step from Assassin. Medium-ish from all forms of Hunters. Low on that Ret Pally, they just have that horse. It's really hard for Rets to actually not get kited a lot of the times. And then high for that Fury, tons of leaps, charges, and medium for that Arms Warrior. Now for this last row, guys, World PvP 1v1 self-sustain. It's an interesting column, but I wanted to add it because I do realize a bunch of people don't just do arena. People like to do World PvP, sustain, stuff like that. And let me just tell you, you're going to be good in this column if you have mobility, so the classes with high mobility. If you have stuns, so generally the classes with that control. And then if you have some type of self-healing, right? And we don't have a self-healing column, but that's kind of where this last one comes in. So immediately the classes that are doing very well: Demon Hunters, Feral Druids, Boomkins, Windwalkers, Sub-Rogues, Assassination, and Outlaw. These classes have stealth, or mobility, ways to just do some big one-shots, ways to escape, run away, heal themselves, stuff like that. So all of those classes, if you're going to be in a one, like you're just doing solo world PvP, or even with a couple of friends, might be the way to go. Now, warriors I have here as low because they just kind of need that healer. Hunters and pallies in that medium range because they can hold their own, but if it's a rogue versus that pally, the rogue can just keep resetting and running in stealth, and that the rogue's eventually going to win. All of these high classes are usually going to win in that situation. And then a lot of these medium, like Shadow Priest low, right? Shadow Priest kind of needs some extra players to help them out so they can start spreading the pressure and then doing setups and stuff like that. But with by themselves, they're not really going to be able to handle it. And then a lot of classes here in the medium range, they can handle their own. They're not crazy mobility, but not crazy bad. They can kind of heal, but maybe not as good as some of these other classes. And then we have Affliction as medium, and then Destro and Demo as low. Affliction does have a drain spec that you can continually heal yourself through that drain. It actually does pretty well, but I'd say overall, maybe not quite as well as something with just setup stuns, more mobility and stuff like that. Because you have to keep in mind a lot of world PvP is just running away, escaping certain situations, right? Running from NPCs and stuff like that. So mobility being so low for Warlock makes it so maybe not quite the greatest. But here it is, guys. I hope this really, really helps you pick your class in World of Warcraft. Pretty much every single class and spec and kind of what they're good or bad at in this video, so I hope it narrows it down. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. I hope this helps pick your class in World of Warcraft for those of you having issues with that. Guys, thumbs this video down if you didn't like it. Talk to me down below in the comments about what you guys think of all this stuff, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next upload. Peace.